Part 39. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 381. Chapter 381 Bailey Wrongs is here too. Fan Qinjiao has never gone out since Bailey Fengming personally sent Fan Qinjiao back to Hua's house. The day to go to the palace is getting closer. Since he knows that the person coming is not good, Fan Qinjiao must prepare early. Furthermore, if Zhen Yuguo really came to see a doctor this time as she speculated. So if you want to win the attention of the Genii kingdom, treating the prince's illness is the top priority. Although the medical skills of the Genii country are more sophisticated than those of Ziliang, which does not regard medicine as important, it is absolutely impossible that there are no imperial doctors in the country. And the disease that makes the imperial doctors of Genii kingdom helpless is probably caused by the prince himself. The illness itself came from the mother and fetus, and there was no exact source of infection or cause of the disease. This left the imperial doctor of Genii state, who was not skilled in medical skills, with nothing to do. When dealing with your own illness, keep your head down and your heart down. The medicines formulated and developed by Gu Fan Qinjiao are mainly based on the heart and head. I just hope that I can prepare more auxiliary medicines now so that I won't be restrained when I go to the palace and meet the Prince of Genii Kingdom. Miss, Third Lady's letter. Ningguan entered the door with a happy face. Fan Qinjiao counted the time and found that Xiaoxian should have returned a few days ago, so that he could accompany Bailey Fengming to the gathering of the princes and concubines. In this case, Tianyu should have arrived in Yuzhu now. Opening the letter, it turned out to be a divine message to ensure peace. Tianyu had just arrived in Yuzhu on the day he wrote the letter. Under the of Sushaoxi, the journey was fairly smooth. During this period, Tianyu plans to get familiar with Yuzhu first, and then start preparing for a new shop. Fan Qinjiao knew in his heart that Tianyu would be when he arrived in Yuzhu, so he went to Qingnanzai in person. Qingnanzai, which has not been here for many days, is still overcrowded. I have to say that Muyan manages Qingnanzai very well, and the new products launched every season are all sold out. Muyan was originally extremely sensitive to the smell of medicinal materials, so the fragrance of the things she prepared was something that no one else could imitate even if they tried to imitate it. Yuluo, Pengjing, and Muyan were also very comfortable getting along with each other. When Fan Qinjiao arrived, he saw three people busy having fun in the shop. Muyan saw the third sister at a glance, and quickly invited the third sister into the accounting room. Why is the third sister here? They are all sisters, and Fan Qinjiao is not going to hide it. Muyan, I want Tianyu to sell your goods first. Now there is only Tianyu himself in Yuzhu. Even if Sushaoxi will stay with Tianyu temporarily, he will not be able to help at all as he knows nothing about medicinal materials. Fan Qinjiao thought about it and decided that it would be safest to get the goods from Qingnanzai. This is how Tianyu can quickly get on the right track. Muyan didn't make any sense to the third sister's suggestion. That night, she asked Yuluo and Pengjing to take stock of the various items in the shop. At the same time that the first batch of Qingnanzai's goods was delivered to Yuzhu, Han Jingchen's wedding was ushered in. It goes without saying much about the relationship between Fan Qinjiao and Han Jingchen, as they certainly wanted to go there in person. I just didn't expect that the Han family would post a message one day in advance, inviting Fan Qinjiao to go first. Fan Qinjiao frowned as he looked at the post in his hand. For example, it would be fine if Han Jingchen married into an ordinary family. But Han Jingchen will be the sixth prince's concubine tomorrow. Even if the sixth prince no longer has a sense of presence in the court, the original rules cannot be broken. Not to mention that she, who is not even remotely related to Han Jingchen, arrived at the wrong time a day early. Even the sisters who were really related to Han Jingchen had to be deliberately avoided. After all, Han Jingchen is the sixth prince's concubine, and her status dictates that she must be dignified at all times and not act like a little daughter. Otherwise, the sisters who have made good friends really rushed there the day before. On the wedding day, would they have to watch the sixth prince and concubine burst into tears without any dignity at all? Seeing that her young lady had not spoken, Mammy Sue suggested, I guess the sixth prince and concubine are young and don't understand these rules, but do you need me to reply to her? Fan Kinjao shook his head, no need. Han Jingchen is not very old, but she is definitely not stupid and ignorant. Now that someone has sent the post, I'm afraid there are other things to discuss with her. Half an hour later, Fan Kinjao arrived at Han Mansion with the post in hand. When Han Jingchen saw Fan Kinjao, she directly pulled her into her boudoir. You are finally here. Fan Kinjao looked at Han Jingchen and asked softly, but what happened? Han Jingchen was shocked, how did you know? Fan Kinjao raised his eyebrows and shook the post in his hand. Han Jingchen sighed helplessly, I can't help it. The people who came to congratulate me recently have a bad attitude. I can't go out to find you. I'm afraid of attracting other people's attention if I come to your door rashly. Fan Kinjao looked at Han Jingchen's incomprehensible words and was really curious, what is it that makes you so embarrassed? Han Jingchen looked at Fan Kinjao and was silent for a long time before she took her hand with courage and said, Kinjao, last time my maid helped the eldest princess to frame you, do you still remember? Afterwards, I interrogated the maid carefully, but she said that it was because of you that Yan Hanbei became the eldest prince's concubine. Fan Kinjao was startled for a moment, these words were really beyond her expectation. No wonder Yan Hanbei's hostility towards her turned into hatred. Is it because of this? It's just that although Yan Hanbei has always been at odds with her, he is not a scheming person and would never think of using this matter to frame her. Han Jingchen also thought of this, and became even more worried, since the eldest prince said so, she already believed it to be true. Kinjao, you should be extremely careful in the future. Who doesn't know that the eldest prince is born with a disability? Now Yan Hanbei believes that if you persuade her to marry a disabled person, I'm afraid she will hate you even more. Fan Kinjao smiled and said, why aren't you afraid that I was the one who instigated you? Han Jingchen snorted, if you really don't like Yan Hanbei, just punch him. There is no need to do such a thing that harms others and does not benefit yourself. She can trust her friends. Facing Han Jingchen's extremely positive tone, Fan Kinjao's heart felt indescribably warm. She did all the unscrupulous things in her last life, so she does not deserve to have such a thing as friendship. But fortunately, it's not too late now. Kinjao, do you think it's Pan Yulu? No, the second prince and concubine don't need to do this at all. That day when the princes and concubines had a small gathering, Fan Kinjao saw clearly that Pan Yulu blamed Yan Hanbei face to face for not standing up for him. For the kind of person who can't hide things in his heart, there is no such plan to frame her secretly. The person who can frame her in front of Yan Hanbei must be the person Yan Hanbei trusts the most. Moreover, this person's method is by no means ordinary. He just pinched Yan Hanbei's sore spot, making Yan Hanbei completely lose his mind and hate her. It's just that Fan Kinjao didn't have time to delve into this person's identity. Since the person who comes is not good, there will always be a moment when the person comes out of the water. Why should she waste her time and thoughts on someone who is not worthy of it? The night is getting darker. Fan Kinjao, who was sitting by the window, accidentally discovered that the lights in the main courtyard were still on. That should be the courtyard where Mrs. Han and Mr. Han live. Normally speaking, tomorrow is Han Jingchen's wedding, so she has to get up early and get busy. How could she not turn off the lights so late? Just at this moment, two maids passed by the window. Have you heard that the distinguished guest is still in the master and his wife's yard? It seems like I'm going to stay at our Han mansion tonight. Fan Kinjao frowned slightly. Those who can stay in Han mansion one day in advance are naturally highly valued by the Han family. But before Fan Kinjao had time to think carefully about the identity of that distinguished guest, he heard one of the maids say, he is not only our distinguished guest, but also the current third prince. In terms of identity, he can be regarded as our Han dynasty, a guest of the house. The third prince. Bailey wrongs. Those who serve as officials in the court are not all treacherous ministers, but they must all be good people. The incident involving the second young lady of the Pan family turned out like that last time. Whether it was Han Yao or MRS Han, they must have known in their hearts the purpose of the Pan family's intention to send someone off to the sixth prince's residence. But now that the Han family and the Pan family have no contact with each other, how can they accept Bailey wrongs? Or did she hear something wrong? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 382. Chapter 382. When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. Kinjao, why aren't you sleeping yet? Han Jingchen, who had just woken up from a nap lying on the table, opened her eyes in a daze and saw Fan Kinjao sitting by the window in a daze. Fan Kinjao turned to look at Han Jingchen, but didn't ask anything. He stood up and pulled her to the bed. In 2 hours, I have to get up to wash and change clothes. Let's get some sleep. Tomorrow is Han Jingchen's wedding, and Fan Kinjao doesn't want these trivial matters to keep her from marrying happily. Or maybe, she really heard it wrong? Lying on the bed, Han Jingchen held Fan Kinjao's soft body in her arms, murmuring with her eyes closed, "Kinjao, people say that after getting married, no matter how good the sisters are, they will go in opposite directions, but I don't want to in that case. I just want to be with you for the rest of my life, and we want to be together forever, okay?" Fan Kinjao raised his hand and touched Han Jingchen's face, which was hot from sleep, and said softly, "Okay." She doesn't know how far eternity is, but as long as she is alive, no one can hurt the people she cares about. Early in the morning, it was just dawn, and the maids who had been prepared for a long time crowded into Han Jingchen's boudoir. Fan Kinjao, who had already woken up, took advantage of Han Jingchen's break to wash up and get up and leave the yard. There were already many guests standing in the front yard. As soon as Sun Kentung saw Fan Kinjao, he ran over with a smile. "I was still waiting for you at the door, but you came from the backyard." Fan Kinjao said softly, "The sixth princess was a little afraid of getting married yesterday, so I came to accompany her." Sun Kongtong had an expression on her face that I understood, "Not to mention her, even I am scared. As long as I think about living with a stranger in the future, I can't wait to go to the Guzi temple to get a seat right now." Fan Kinjao shook his head helplessly, "If MRS Sun hears this, I will definitely break your legs." Sun Kentung stuck out his tongue playfully. At this time, many guests crowded in. Sun Kongtong was stunned when he saw the person coming. "Isn't the Wen family the eldest prince's mother's family? Why are they here too?" Before Fan Kinjao could follow the sound and look over, Sun Kentung said again, "That's the eighth prince's mother's family, and the second prince's mother's family is also here. Didn't you realize that the Han family is so respectable?" Fan Kinjao watched those distinguished people crowding the courtyard, but he did not dare to agree with Sun Kentung's words. Han Yao is the governor of Sichuan province, but he is not able to invite prominent people from the main city to congratulate him. I'm afraid that the princess couldn't sit still after hearing that the third prince was trying to win over the Han family. Since she was a married daughter of the Han family, it was hard for the princess to come in person, so the spectacular scene happened. These dignitaries from the main city are afraid that they all come here for one purpose, which is to please the Han government. The person who prompted all this was Bailey Fengming. For the emperor, who has always been partial to the third prince, if the third prince wants to use the Han family to win over the sixth prince's mother's family, he must turn a blind eye. After all, the emperor has been paying more attention to Bailey Fengming recently, and he is indebted to Bailey Rongs, who he has always loved and loved when he grew up. Bailey Fengming knew this very well, so it was even more impossible for him to step in and stop him and annoy the emperor. Simply let the news out and make all the princes ready to take action. Now that there are so many pairs of eyes staring at him, Bailey Wrongs will not be able to do it easily no matter what he wants. That's, Sun Kentung's exclamation sounded again. At the same time, the front yard, which was originally crowded, also became quiet. Fan Kinjao followed Sun Kentung's surprised gaze and was secretly surprised when he saw Bailey Wrongs, who followed Han Yao out of the main hall to greet the guests. Suddenly, the whispers heard by the maids yesterday were heard. Fan Kinjao knew that it was not that she heard wrongly, but that Bailey Wrongs was really in the Han mansion. What's more, I'm afraid that Bailey Wrongs, like her, spent the night in Han mansion. Fan Kinjao was able to come to Han mansion in advance because of Han Jingchen. But Bailey Wrongs can do the same, and the reason has to make people think deeply. Especially looking at Han Yao's respectful and warm look towards Bailey Wrongs, not to mention Fan Kinjao was surprised, even the other princes' mothers' families were stunned. During this period, the princes all tried their best to get close to Han Yao. But Han Yao is a very self-aware person. No matter which prince's overtures he faces, he has always stayed away. But Han Yao, who would rather take leave than go to court, rather than get involved in the murky waters of the prince's power struggle, is now standing by the third prince's side. This. Who can not be surprised? Facing everyone's surprise, Bailey Wrongs just smiled indifferently. I never thought that one day I would be able to be my mother-in-law, but I would like to thank Mr. Han for inviting me into the house one day in advance. Han Yao clasped his fists and said, His Highness the Third Highness made a serious statement. It is an honor for me, Han Yao, to have His Highness the Third Highness as my guest. Bailey Wrongs smiled and added, I had a great chat with Mr. Han yesterday, but I didn't even notice it was done. Han Yao bowed his head humbly. This is all the negligence of the humble minister. The upper room has been arranged by the servants. If the Third Highness does not dislike it, I will ask the Third Highness to sit and rest in the Han mansion after my daughter gets married. In this case, I'm afraid I will continue to bother Mr. Han. It is a blessing for a humble minister to be able to chat with His Highness the whole night. The people in the front yard looked at the scene and didn't know what to say. I don't even know what else to say. Obviously, the third prince has completely won over Han Yao. The most puzzling thing is that no matter where the third prince goes, Han Yao follows him. It can be said that he is inseparable. The third prince seemed to be aware of the dissatisfaction of the people around him, so he took the initiative to back down and said, Master Han still has guests to take care of, so I will go to the main hall to sit down first, and I won't bother you here anymore. As soon as he finished speaking, the third prince really turned around and left. Seeing that the opportunity was rare, everyone hurriedly took the opportunity to gather around Han Yao. In the end, before anyone could say anything, they saw Han Yao following the third prince closely to the front hall. Everybody! This is nonsense. Sun Kentung was surprised. Uncle Han is possessed by evil spirits. In this situation, she believed that Uncle Han was in love with the third prince. Fan Kinjao narrowed his eyes slightly. Han Jingchen is about to marry the sixth prince, and Han Yao will not rush to the team at this time no matter what. It would be fine if Bailey Wrongs could really bring the sixth prince to his side afterward. If the sixth prince had not agreed, Han Jingchen would be the most embarrassed one. Han Yao is Han Jingchen's daughter. Judging from Han Jingchen's character, she must have been favored since childhood. How can a father who loves his daughter so much put her in such trouble? When something goes wrong, there must be a monster. Even if Han Yao takes the initiative and is willing to side with Bailey Wrongs, Fan Kinjao will not stand idly by. Not to mention that there are still a lot of doubts at the moment. For her in this life, it is either repayment or revenge. So as long as she, Fan Kinjao, is still breathing, Bailey Wrongs will not be able to talk about anything, and everything she wishes will come true. With the rules in mind, Fan Kinjao became calmer. At this moment, Mrs. Han also walked towards the main hall from the backyard. Fan Kinjao calmed down and took the initiative to go over and greet Mrs. Han. Mrs. Han's wife was very enthusiastic about Fan Kinjao, and even took the initiative to invite Fan Kinjao and Sun Kantong to sit together in the main hall. Sun Kangtong felt uncomfortable when she thought of a prince sitting in the main hall, and hurriedly ran away with the excuse of going to the backyard to visit Han Jingchen. Fan Kinjao followed Mrs. Han into the main hall. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 383. Chapter 383. She just happened to be in the mood too. In the main hall, Han Yajian was chatting happily with Bailey Rongs. Facing Fan Kinjao, who suddenly entered the door, Bailey Rongs was stunned. Today, Fan Kinjao is wearing an apricot yellow skirt, with a snow-white fox hoodie draped over her shoulders. Her slim figure is perfectly outlined, and her jade-like face is shrouded in a faint halo by the sunlight behind her. After the last incident in the palace, Bailey Rongs was stunned by Fan Kinjao. Now looking at Fan Kinjao, whom I haven't seen for a while, I feel like I'm in a trance again. Fan Kinjao suppressed the waves of disgust in his heart and took the initiative to say hello. I would like to say hello to your highness, your majesty. Bailey Rongs raised his hand and said in a gentle voice, Princess Jingping does not need to be polite. Mrs. Han looked at the scene and felt indescribably happy in her heart. The third prince is as gentle as jade, and Princess Jingping is as beautiful as a painting. The two of them look like a painting when they stand together. Fan Kinjao felt ice cold in his heart. There are no ugly people in the royal family. Although the princes have the same father and mother, they all have their own merits. But Bailey Rongs is the kind of person who can maximize his own advantages. Compared with other princes who are born to lower their eyelids and look at others, he seems to make people want to get close to him. It is precisely because of this that the former Fan Kinjao was coaxed into turning around by this hypocritical face. Even doing those unscrupulous things with your own hands. Fan Kinjao pretended not to notice Bailey Rongs' sizing and sat aside with Mrs. Han. Mrs. Han was busy asking her servants to serve tea, while Bailey Rongs continued to chat with Han Yao. Fan Kinjao seemed to be talking to Mrs. Han, but in fact he was always observing Han Yao's every move in the dark. Every time Bailey Rongs spoke, no matter how noisy the surroundings were, Han Yao could always pay attention to Bailey Rongs' side immediately. But when he looked at Bailey Rongs, Han Yao's eyes seemed a little dull. Because this dullness is fleeting, it is difficult for people to notice. Just at this moment, the maid came in with a tea tray. Han Yao was a second-rank official in the imperial court, and his food and drink had the same level of regulations. Fan Kinjao remembers that at that time, only the second-rank officials in the imperial court drank Luan Guapian. But now this smell. Han Yao took the teacup first and handed it to Bailey Rongs before taking a cup himself. Then the maid placed the remaining 2 teacups on Fan Kinjao's and Mrs. Han's tables respectively. Fan Kinjao raised the teacup calmly, but when he smelled it, a light and delicate fragrance hit his face. This is Shanxiang tea. Normally speaking, Han Yao would never drink such a common tea. Seeing that Fan Kinjao was silent, Mrs. Han asked softly, but Princess Jingping doesn't like this tea. Fan Kinjao excused himself and smiled slightly, I just didn't expect Mr. Han to like mountain fragrant tea so much. Mrs. Han was stunned for a moment when she heard this. She clearly remembered that the tea at home was always from Luan Guapian. Han Yao smiled when he heard this and said, this tea was sent by His Highness the Third Highness. I drank a lot of it yesterday. I never thought that such an unknown tea tastes so good. Bailey Rongs smiled warmly, expensive things have their own advantages, but they may not really suit everyone's liking. I just tasted the mountain tea by chance, and I just wanted to let Han Sir, I also tried it, but I never thought that Sir Han and I would hit it off. Lies. It's all lies. Fan Kinjao and Bailey Rongs have been married for life, so how come they don't understand his character? This man is not only ambitious, but also very expensive and extravagant. Everything in his mansion is of the best quality. How could he value such cheap mountain tea now? Furthermore, Bailey Rongs attaches great importance to face. Bailey Rongs' purpose of coming to Han Mansion this time is self-evident, and since this is the case, he will not slap himself in the face. The dignified third prince turned out to be a coarse tea that could be seen in the market. He was afraid that even Bailey Rongs himself would be ashamed to see others. But now Bailey Rongs would rather not even lose his own face, but is also willing to drink mountain tea with Han Yao. The reason behind this is intriguing. Mrs. Han didn't seem to like the overly fragrant mountain tea, but because the third prince was still sitting here, she had to take a sip to save her face. When Mrs. Han put down the teacup, she praised with a smile on her face, "I never thought this tea tastes so good." After saying a few words, he took the initiative to pick up the teacup again. This change. Fan Kinjao looked at Mrs. Han beside him suspiciously, but before he had time to think deeply, he suddenly heard Bailey Rongs say again, "I wonder what Princess Jingping thinks." As soon as Fan Kinjao heard Bailey Rongs' hypocritical voice, she wanted to chop it into pieces and throw it to the street to feed the dogs. But just when she was about to open her mouth to talk to the scumbag, she felt an inexplicable feeling. The feeling of submission just arises spontaneously. This feeling was something that even Fan Kinjao himself couldn't explain. Facing Bailey Rongs' inquiry, she agreed almost mechanically, "It's indeed good tea." While speaking, she turned out a silver needle from her sleeve. When the silver needle pierced the Hago point, in an instant, the uncontrolled brain gradually returned to calm. Seeing that Fan Kinjao did not show the expression he was expecting, Bailey Rongs unconsciously touched the sachet on his waist. Fan Kinjao is a medical girl from the Tao family, and even her father is full of praise for her medical skills. I'm afraid Fan Kinjao now knows the mystery. Thinking like this, Bailey Rongs couldn't help but put up his guard. He originally wanted to say a few polite words to Fan Kinjao, but he even looked away from Fan Kinjao. Fan Kinjao saw Bailey Rongs' actions and felt even more strange. She has smelled this mountain tea and even drank it? She is very sure that there is nothing wrong with the tea itself. So what exactly is the problem? Fan Kinjao looked at Bailey Rongs again, and saw him talking to Han Yao, his legs always crossing each other intentionally or unintentionally. And in this invisible cover, there is a purse that is flickering. Fan Kinjao understood instantly. The reason why Shanxiang tea is rich is that it contains a star blue medicinal material. This medicinal material is pungent, bitter, and warm in nature. It is often used to promote qi and break blood, eliminate accumulation, and relieve pain. It's just that people who practice medicine rarely prescribe star blue when treating blood, heartache, or food stagnation. Just because once it collides with the money grass, it will make people uncontrollably feel hysterical. Although Fan Kinjao doesn't know what other medicinal materials Bailey Rongs added to his purse at the moment, Lian Kinko must be included in it. In this way, it is not surprising that Bailey Rongs became a guest of the Han family. The Hago point punctured by the silver needle oozed out traces of blood. Fan Kinjao rubbed it on his fingertips and narrowed his eyes slightly. She knew very well who was able to prepare medicinal materials for Bailey Rongs. I do not want Bailey Rongs to draw the mother's house of the six princes in order to borrow Hanfu's potential, and even such a disgusting dang can do it. As expected, a scumbag is a scumbag. The blood on his fingertips gradually became cold but sticky, and Fan Kinjao's lips curved into a sneer. Want to play, don't you? She just happened to be interested. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 384. Chapter 384. Fan Kinjao also felt frustrated. A maid came in again carrying freshly boiled water. Fan Kinjao took the initiative to stand up and said, "It is all thanks to His Highness that I can drink such wonderful tea. I would also like to ask Your Highness to give me a chance to thank you and take the initiative to pour tea and refill water for Your Highness." Bailey Rong saw that Fan Kinjao had not waited for him to answer, so he took the initiative to come over. He was even more sure that his things had probably been cracked by Fan Kinjao. Thinking like this, Bailey Rongs did not dare to take it lightly. While Fan Kinjao stood still in front of him, he also stood up and tried to the teapot from Fan Kinjao's hand. "From now on, Princess Jingping will be the crown princess, and I will be one of the same family. We are one family, there is no point in talking about two things." Fan Kinjao did not dodge, but Bailey Rong snatched the teapot away. Unwilling to do so, his eyes were filled with a layer of sullenness, and his hands were clenched tightly into fists. "Your Highness, Third Prince, this if you meet me outside, how can you talk about being a family?" Bailey Rong smiled and said, "I just don't want Princess Jingping to be too tired." As if he was afraid that Fan Kinjao would the teapot away again and pretend to accidentally drop it on him, Bailey Rongs even poured the tea for himself while talking, and then handed the teapot over to him. Gave it to a servant. Seeing his servant walking out of the front hall carrying a teapot, Bailey Rongs looked at Fan Kinjao with a hint of teasing. Fan Kinjao is still too young to play these tricks with him. Even if Fan Kinjao can see an iduan in this, so what, the Han family is already under his thumb. No matter what Fan Kinjao says, the Han family will not believe it. As long as today passes and he follows the Han family's path to the Zhou family, it will be of no use even if the Han family reacts afterwards. So right now, the most important thing is to protect the sachet around his waist. Fan Kinjao seemed to see the sarcasm in Bailey Rong's eyes, and turned away in anger, without even saying hello to Mrs. Han and Han Yao. Bailey Rongs looked at Fan Kinjao's back with a little satisfaction, feeling indescribably comfortable in his heart. But he had never seen Fan Kinjao walk out of the door, his face already calm and cold. The so-called irritation just now seemed to have never happened to Fan Kinjao. Sun Kongtong had been waiting anxiously in the yard for a long time. Seeing Fan Kinjao coming out, he quickly came over and took her hand and asked, "Why did you come out so slowly? Could it be that the third prince made things difficult for you?" Fan Kinjao shook his head and looked in the direction of the backyard. "What's going on over there with Han Jingchen?" Sun Kongtong said with a smile, "I had already started to lose my hair when I came out." As soon as Sun Kongtong's voice fell, the sound of crackling firecrackers was heard at the door. Fan Kinjao knew that this was an auspicious time, and the sixth prince should have arrived at the door of the mansion to pick him up. When the sixth prince's concubine is picked up, the guests from her mother's side will also go to the sixth prince's residence. Although the sixth prince's mother and concubine left early, the Zhou family is the mother's family of the sixth prince's mother and concubine after all. Now that the sixth prince is getting married, even if the Zhou family doesn't get close to the sixth prince on weekdays, they still want to go there to support him. Bailey Rongs has laid out such a big game of chess, so he has to follow it personally. By then, Han Yao, who was already at the mercy of Bailey Rongs, might be willing to be a stepping stone for Bailey Rongs. Without further ado, Fan Kinjao took Sun Kongtong's hand and whispered in his ear. Sun Kongtong's originally happy face turned into one full of shock. Then he looked at Fan Kinjao who was standing next to him. He felt that after hearing what he just said, his life seemed to be in danger. "Kinjao, are you serious?" From the corner of his eye, Fan Kinjao saw a figure moving in the backyard, and he squeezed Sun Kongtong's hand tightly. "Of course." Sun Kongtong still couldn't believe it. "This is Han Jingchen's happy day. Is it really okay for us to make such a fuss?" Fan Kinjao nodded. "Believe me. Once Bailey Rong steps on Han Yao and gets married to the Zhou family, what if Han Yao is overpowered by the medicine afterwards? At that time, I am afraid that Bailey Rongs, who has already integrated into the Zhou family, will lead me by the nose. After all, Han Jingchen is the sixth prince's concubine, and the Zhou family is the sixth prince's maternal family. Even if Han Yao didn't want to stir up the muddy water, he still had to get involved in it in order not to make it difficult for Han Jingchen. Fan Qinjiao doesn't want to see that kind of situation. Thinking about it, Han Jingchen didn't want to see it either. So the simplest way now is to cut through the mess with a quick knife. Sun Kongtong saw that Fan Qinjiao was really not joking. Although he still couldn't understand her thoughts, he still slipped away from the crowd obediently. At the same time, there was a cry, "The auspicious time has come." Wearing wedding clothes, Han Jingchen walked out of the backyard with the support of 11 Po. As the door of the Han mansion opened wide, the guests in the front yard immediately saw the sixth prince who came to receive the bride. The sixth prince, who was also wearing a wedding dress and was sitting on a horse, had a fake smile on his handsome face, but in fact, he was nervously tightening the horse rope in his hand. It's not that he is afraid of getting married. But I am afraid of the horse underneath me. He has been ignorant of all kinds of things since he was a child, and he doesn't know how to ride a horse at all. It's just that now everyone is focusing on the Han family in order to curry favor with the Zhou family. No one cares about him, the sixth prince who has no power and no sense of existence. Fortunately, Han Jingchen didn't have any ink marks, and in just a blink of an eye, she was surrounded by people and walked to the front yard. It was Sun Kentong who was standing in the crowd, standing on tiptoes and looking in the direction of Fan Qinjiao, making his final death struggle. Fan Qinjiao caught a glimpse of Bailey Rongs following the two elders of the Han family out of the main hall and nodded to Sun Kentong. Sun Kongtong felt that her heart was in her throat. With the thought of dying, she shouted at the top of her voice, "Ah! Where did the mouse come from?" The people present today, both men and women, are dignitaries with high status in the main city. For these pampered people, rats can be described as evil men and women to be afraid of. As Sun Kentong's words fell, the crowd waiting to see him off exploded in an instant. Sun Kongtong thought about Fan Qinjiao's explanation, and even pointed to a certain place in the panic of everyone, and said firmly, "It's there. I saw it with my own eyes. It's as big as a cat. I'm afraid a rat of this size will bite. Are you human?" Almost instantly, the guests in the courtyard could no longer stand still and rushed out of the door one after another. Because the courtyard has long been overcrowded, now it is completely chaotic under the wanton crowding. Upon seeing this, the two elders of the Han family hurriedly walked down the steps to evacuate the guests. Po 11 also hurriedly helped Han Jingchen aside, for fear of knocking off the red hijab on her head. Bailey Rongs looked at such a messy scene and subconsciously looked in the direction of Fan Qinjiao. At this moment, Fan Qinjiao was also looking at him. When their eyes met, Fan Qinjiao's coldness in the black ink made Bailey Rongs feel uneasy. Bailey Rongs, who was still wondering what was going on, suddenly understood that this was probably designed by Fan Qinjiao. As for the reason, Bailey Rongs instinctively blocked the sachet at his waist with his arm. As expected, Fan Qinjiao was walking slowly step by step while Bailey Rongs was on guard. Bailey Rongs never expected that Fan Qinjiao would be so courageous. But it's right to think about it, Fan Qinjiao has already taken refuge in the prince, and he is naturally incompatible with him. At the thought of Fan Qinjiao and Bailey Fengming becoming a couple in the future, Bailey Rongs felt an unspeakable hatred growing in his heart. Spurred on by hatred, Bailey Rongs was even ready. As long as Fan Qinjiao really dared to walk in front of him with the intention of destroying his plan, he would simply bite Fan Qinjiao and want to be disrespectful to him. As long as he insists on this matter, Fan Qinjiao's reputation will be completely ruined. How can a person who dares to be disrespectful to the prince be the crown prince of Ziliang? End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 385. Chapter 385, Drag him out and beat him to death with sticks. Just when Bailey Wrongs had made up his mind, an extremely strong force hit him from the other side. It was Bailey Wrongs who was fully on guard against Fan Kinjao, but he was knocked back 3 steps. His lower back hit Bailey Wrongs directly against the pillar, and his face turned blue from the pain. It's just that everything happened too fast. By the time Bailey Wrongs came back to his senses, he had already lost track of the person who hit him. Looking warily in Fan Kinjao's direction again, he saw that Fan Kinjao had stopped where he was. Bailey Wrongs frowned in confusion. Did he think wrong? At the entrance of the Han family's mansion, there was still a commotion. The 6th prince, who didn't know how to ride a horse, looked at the panicked crowd. Although he didn't know what happened, he was so frightened that his face turned pale. The horse beneath him was clearly showing signs of restlessness. The 6th prince was so frightened that his legs began to tremble. He gritted his teeth and thought of jumping off the horse. However, his legs became so weak that he fell off the horse's back. Folded down. The 6th prince felt like he was falling head first, and there was only one sentence left in his heart. This time it's really embarrassing. The noise from the 6th prince's side attracted the attention of the guests at the door. Just when everyone looked towards the 6th prince, they saw nothing. Because I don't know when, a carriage blocked the door of Hanbok. The 6th prince, who fell heavily to the ground, felt that his head and eyes were filled with twinkling stars, and he couldn't tell what night it was. As a result, he heard a familiar voice in front of him. Xiaoxian, control the frightened horse. Lin Yi, please comfort the guests, and remember not to let the guests go behind the carriage. The 6th prince slowly opened his eyes, and saw a white robe coming into view. After being stunned for a long time, he finally called out, "Prince." Bailey Fengming turned around following the sound, and when he saw that the 6th prince was safe and sound, he took the initiative to reach out to help him. I originally wanted to rush over to congratulate the 6th prince, but I didn't expect to encounter such a thrilling scene. Fortunately, I was not in danger. The 6th prince felt ashamed. Not all of them know how to ride a horse. Bailey Fengming smiled indifferently. No one in this world is perfect, so the 6th emperor brother doesn't need to care. These words were not very enlightening, but the 6th prince felt heartwarming after hearing them. Turning around again, he saw that the distance between him and the Han mansion was completely blocked by the prince's carriage, and the 6th prince was following Nuan Yang Yang. The 6th prince has no power, but he is not a fool either. Don't think he didn't realize that these guests today are the maternal homes of other royal brothers. And why do these people go so far as to fawn over the parents of their own princes and concubines? Does he really not know? No, the 6th prince knows better than everyone else. But he is just a salted fish, so he is not qualified to judge others. But now someone is willing to stand in front of him and take the initiative to protect him from the wind and rain. How can he not be grateful? Just like when the princes still lived in the palace, all the princes disliked him for being timid and cowardly, and he had no mother-in-law to support him. No one was friendly with him at all, but only the prince was willing to talk to him and study with him. It's like right now. Actually, some things have changed, but they seem to have stayed the same. Bailey Fengming didn't say much. After the 6th prince had finished packing, he asked Xiaoxian to take away the carriage. The guests of the Han family have gradually calmed down under the comfort of the 2 elders of the Han family. Facing the sudden appearance of His Royal Highness, everyone was obviously stunned. Han Yao was the first to react and hurriedly made official courtesy. "I'm humbled to bow to His Highness the Crown Prince." Everyone else came to their senses one after another and knelt on the ground. "Greetings to His Majesty the Crown Prince." Although there is only one word difference between prince and prince, their meanings are quite different. One is the emperor's son. One is the future emperor of Ziliang. These people who do not need to greet the prince naturally have to kneel down to greet him when they see him. This is also the reason why Bailey Rongs fought so hard for his rights. But it is a seedling that is not as good as his disease. He can have everything he has. Bailey Fengming smiled calmly, I came uninvited. Please get up. Everyone stood up slowly and instinctively looked at Fan Qinjiao, who was standing behind. There are different opinions in the main city about the marriage between the prince and Princess Jingping. Now that two people suddenly appeared in one place, everyone was watching curiously. As a result, before anyone could look away from Fan Qinjiao, the prince's figure also appeared. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and then they understood after taking a closer look. It turned out that His Highness the Crown Prince took the initiative to come to Princess Jingping. Even in the depth of winter, Fan Qinjiao's forehead was covered with a layer of sweat after all the fuss just now. Bailey Fengming took out a handkerchief from his arms and gently wiped his plump forehead, but where did it touch? Fan Qinjiao shook his head, no. Bailey Fengming seemed a little uneasy, and looked at Fan Qinjiao carefully, and then said, I will be leaving for the palace in a few days, but everything is packed properly. It's almost done. The Queen Mother is afraid that you won't get used to living in the palace, so why don't you go to the palace and live with the Queen Mother? The Queen is tired from working in the harem. Now it is rare to go to the palace to relax, so I won't bother you. That's fine, then I'll tell my mother. Good. Now Bailey Fengming is following the emperor's order to show affection, and the queen must obey the emperor's wishes. But not everyone knows this kind of thing. Looking at the two people who were chatting about home affairs, with indifferent and calm expressions, everyone was stunned. When they saw the prince himself reaching out to straighten Princess Jingping's shoulders, everyone's eyes dropped to the ground. Who said that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince was dissatisfied with this marriage? Who said that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince dislikes Princess Jingping? Drag him out and beat him to death with sticks. This kind of love and tenderness is really not too sweet. Even the women who had been married for many years at the door could not help but swallow sour water when they saw this. Looking at such a handsome and considerate prince, Mrs. Han really wanted to bite her tongue off. She didn't know why she was so obsessed just now. Why did she think that Princess Jingping was a good match for the third prince? Compared to the prince, the third prince's face is really... It's better not to compare. The scene that Bailey Rongs least wanted to see was unfolding before his eyes in advance. Looking at Fan Qinjiao standing side by side with the prince, talking and laughing, Bailey Rongs felt even more hatred than he expected. If the mother-in-law hadn't been obstructing him all the time, how would it be the prince's turn to take advantage of this? Bailey Rongs stared at Fan Qinjiao with a gloomy look. Fan Swinning looks similar to Fan Qinjiao, but they are just similar. Although Fan Swinning is also proficient in medical skills and has the approval of his mother and concubine, as soon as Fan Qinjiao appears, Fan Swinning is completely incomparable with him. The more he thought about it, the more angry he became. Bailey Rongs almost couldn't bear it and said, the sixth emperor is still waiting at the door. Even the crown prince cannot declare an army to seize the throne. It would be wrong for the sixth emperor and his future siblings to miss the auspicious time. This statement is basically saying that Bailey Fengming came uninvited and was mainly anti-guest. His provocative intentions really shouldn't be too obvious. Fan Qinjiao frowned slightly. She had never noticed before that Bailey Rongs was so petty and indiscriminate in his words. His Royal Highness reminded me that we were just too panicked just now and the guests always need time to calm down. Fortunately, the auspicious time has not passed. Bailey Rongs saw Fan Qinjiao calmly trying to smooth things over for the prince, and the anger in his heart grew even stronger. He gritted his teeth, looked directly at Bailey Fengming and said, I knew that the prince was not good at speaking before, but I never thought that now we can learn from each other's strengths to make up for our weaknesses. Not only did he ridicule Bailey Fengming for hiding behind a woman, but he also pointed out Fan Kinjao's dominance. But this time, before Fan Kinjao could speak, he heard the sixth prince's voice sounding weakly, "I think Princess Jingping is right. Besides, it's me who invited the prince to come today, so it's not a declaration of war, Lord." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 386. Chapter 386. The duck boiled in the pot flew away. Let alone everyone present, even Fan Kinjao did not expect that the sixth prince would take the initiative to speak. In memory, the sixth prince in his previous life did not even dare to take a breath too loudly. Facing the gazes of everyone, the sixth prince tried his best to hold his head high and his chest upright. It could be said that he stood as tall as a pine tree. Naturally, Han Yao couldn't let things develop in an uncontrollable direction, so he quickly came out with a smile to smooth things over. "Princess Jingping is right, and the Third Highness reminded you in time. It is indeed time to get into the sedan chair. After all, the sixth prince's residence is there are also a lot of guests waiting by the side." Bailey Rongs thought that he would be able to see the Zhou family soon, so he kept silent. Mrs. Han quickly winked at Po 11. Zippo hurriedly followed the others and handed the other end of the red silk in Han Jingchen's hand to the sixth prince. Under the gaze of all the guests, the sixth prince slowly led Han Jingchen out of the Han mansion according to the procedure reminded by Zippo. Fan Kinjao took advantage of everyone looking towards the door and looked around. When he finally saw Sun Kentang in the corner, he was about to walk in her direction. What happened just now is really thanks to Sun Kentang. Bailey Rong's guard against her was obvious. Hence, in order to keep him off guard, Fan Kinjao could only use himself to attract Bailey Rong's guard, allowing Sun Kongtong to take the opportunity to get close to Bailey Rongs. And not everyone dares to do such disrespectful things to the prince. "Is the wound on your hand important?" Fan Kinjao took Sun Kentang's hand and observed it carefully. "I could see traces of blood still oozing from the white palms." Sun Kentang said nonchalantly, "This little injury is fine, but it's the matter you mentioned. I didn't do anything wrong, right?" Everything was done according to Fan Kinjao's instructions. To put it bluntly, Sun Kongtong had no idea why he did this. Fan Kinjao sighed helplessly, "You don't even know the reason but you still dare to do it, aren't you afraid of being implicated by me?" She thought Sun Kentang should be able to understand. As a result, this person. He is exactly like a monk who is 2 feet tall. Sun Kongtong chuckled and said, "What are you afraid of? I will only be afraid if I stand opposite you." Thinking about Zhao Jianjia's lesson, it is still clearly before our eyes. Fan Kinjao took out a handkerchief from his pocket and carefully wrapped it on Sun Kentang's palm without saying anything else. For this kind of friend who really pays and thinks about you, it is superfluous to say anything. As long as she remembers her good things, it is enough. Sooner or later, you can pay back twice as much. Sun Kentang actually still doesn't fully understand Fan Kinjao's thoughts until now. She can understand letting her bump into the third prince, but why does she have to injure the enemy 1,000 times and hurt herself 800? She really couldn't figure it out. "Kinjao, is this a new curse?" Fan Kinjao was stunned. "What curse? You deliberately let me cut my hand, and then hit the third prince. In fact, it doesn't seem like anything, but after a while, the third prince will be cursed by my blood, and then become a puppet at my mercy." Fan Kinjao. Would you think too much? If there really was such a thing, evil people would have been punished long ago. However, Sun Kongtong was right about one thing. Hitting Bailey Rongs was the second priority, and touching his body with blood was the main thing. Although it is not as effective as a curse or anything like that, the time to witness a miracle is probably coming soon. By then, I just hope Bailey Rongs can withstand the backlash. At the entrance of Han Mansion, the sixth prince had safely sent Han Jingchen to the sedan chair. The guests in the courtyard naturally followed him out, preparing to follow the sixth prince to the sixth prince's residence. Bailey Rongs walked to Han Yao's side and proactively suggested, "The carriage is ready, Mr. Han, please come." Han Yao was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't quite understand what the third prince said. Bailey Rongs looked at the other guests walking towards their carriages, including the mothers and families of other princes. In order to see the Zhou family as soon as possible, he couldn't help but urge, "Has Master Han forgotten what he said before?" Just now, Han Yao personally promised to introduce him to the Zhou family. Han Yao still stood where he was. Wei Chen wanted to introduce the Zhou family to His Highness the Third Highness, but the madam was frightened by the noise just now. "I am afraid it will be difficult for them to go to the sixth prince's mansion together again. Wei Chen is more than capable, not enough. To put it bluntly, I don't mean to keep my word, I have to stay with my wife." Mrs. Han, who was walking out the door with the help of the maid, was stunned for a second when she heard this. The next second, Madame Han's wife rubbed her forehead and closed her eyes in an extremely cooperative manner. "No matter how you look at it, he looks like he is about to faint from exhaustion." This is the tacit understanding that the couple has had for many years. Fan Qinjiao, who was standing not far away, looked at Han Yao, who was not moving forward, and narrowed his eyes slightly. It seems that the backlash has begun to sweep through. As for whether he can bear it or not, it depends on whether a certain scumbag has strong ability to withstand pressure. Bailey Rongs couldn't bear Han Yao's backbiting. In order to contact the Zhou family with the help of the Han Mansion, he condescended to come to the Han Mansion yesterday and stayed with Han Yao all night. Now he didn't even close his eyes. Han Yao actually told him can't go. Who can withstand this? "Han Yao, how could you go back on your word?" A surge of anger surged into his heart. Bailey Rongs couldn't control himself and grabbed Han Yao's wrist. The force was so strong that he had to crush the wrist to relieve his hatred. Of course, Han Yao knew that the third prince was right. He had indeed changed his mind temporarily. As the saying goes, when you marry, follow your husband. If he really helped the third prince get through to the Han family, it was obvious that he was on the third prince's side. But what if the sixth prince did not form an alliance with the third prince in the end? In this case, his daughter will have to live in a crack. Although Han Yao couldn't figure out why he agreed to help the third prince introduce the Zhou family because he had a headache yesterday, but now that he was considering his daughter's future, he had to politely refuse anything he said. Now looking at the gnashing of teeth of the third prince, Han Yao quickly took a step back, broke free from the restraints on his arms, leaned over slightly and raised his voice, "Your Highness, please walk slowly. I'm sorry that I have to send you far away." After saying that, he turned around and walked to Mrs. Han's side. He supported Mrs. Han and returned to the Han Mansion together. Han Yao deliberately spoke loudly, attracting the attention of many people at the door of the mansion. Even if Bailey Rongs clenched his fists with hatred, he knew that he must not flirt with Han Yao in public. Just as he watched Han Yao disappear from his sight little by little, Bailey Rongs' entire face turned black to ashes. This is no different from watching a duck boil into a pot and fly away again. The other princes' mothers and families never expected that Han Yao would fall out with the third prince as soon as they told him to. Although I don't know the reason, the mothers and families of the other princes rushed to Han Yao's side immediately, either to help find a doctor for Mrs. Han or to ask their servants to go back to the mansion to get ginseng. In everyone's minds, since the third prince has no chance to meet Han Yao, they have an opportunity to take advantage of him. The sixth prince was surrounded by an empty space, with a dull look on his face, as if he was thinking about something important. After a while, he looked at the prince who was closest to him and said, "Brother, let's go." There were over 100 people attending the wedding banquet today, but the sixth prince just called the prince himself. This let's go message was obviously an invitation to the prince to accompany him to the sixth prince's residence. Bailey Fengming turned around and looked at the sixth emperor's brother behind him, but did not speak. The sixth prince waited for a long time, but did not see any reaction from his royal brother. Thinking that he might have been too reserved, he simply said, "We are getting married today. I am afraid that my grandfather and grandmother have already arrived at the mansion. I am not very good at talking by nature, and I hope that the emperor can help me entertain." Everyone present was stunned when they heard this. Such a straightforward statement, only a fool cannot understand it. But neither Bailey Rongs nor the other princes' families expected that the sixth prince would say such a thing. Fan Kinjao was also surprised, but soon his lips curled up. It turns out that from the beginning to the end, none of the people Bailey Fengming ran towards were from the Han family. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 387. Chapter 387, There is no comparison at all. At first, Bailey Rongs wanted to use the help of the Pan family to send the second lady of the Pan family to the sixth prince's residence, but it was just to try to win over the sixth prince. In other words, even Bailey Rongs was just trying to see if he could catch the Zhou family through the Han family. This was just a test, but the result was that Bailey Fengming spread the news and everyone knew it. For a time, the princes who were secretly fighting for power were impatient. Since the third prince can win over the Han family, they can too. That's why we have today's situation. But everyone has forgotten that even though Han Yao is the governor of Sichuan province and has a second-rank official, the Zhou family is the mother's family of the sixth prince. To put it bluntly, if the sixth prince hadn't married Han Jingchen, why would the Han family have anything to do with the Zhou family? So, the focus has never been on the Han family, but on the sixth prince. The sixth prince is weak, incompetent, and powerless, but he is a real grandson of the Zhou family. Nowadays, everyone is eager to please the Han family, which is basically a detour in favor of the far away. Of course, even if those who want to win over the Zhou family react now, it will be of no use. Fan Kinjao was really amazed. First, the news was spread, making Bailey Rongs stand out. Attracting other princes to follow Bailey Rongs' footsteps and ignoring the most important sixth prince. Bailey Fengming's method of killing two birds with one stone is simply not too clever. It was also at this time that everyone came to their senses belatedly. They were led astray by the third prince. And it's the kind of deviation that will never come back. Just looking at the surprisingly firm gaze of the sixth prince, everyone knew in their hearts that even if they reacted, they would never have a chance to be with the Zhou family again. For a time, everyone had to cast their resentful eyes on the culprit. If your third prince hadn't been mentally ill and thoughtless, how could he have turned us all into the 18 bends of the mountain road? Bailey Rongs, who was like a victim, felt a splitting headache as he faced the resentful gazes of everyone. In fact, he originally just wanted to use the Pan family to test the Han family. How come the Han family is regarded as a target to get close to the Zhou family? Suddenly, Bailey Rongs remembered. They were rumors, and they were all rumors that he was trying to please the Han family to get closer to the Zhou family. At the time, he was anxious and worried that other princes would hear the rumors and be the first to get there, so he decided that getting closer to the Zhou family would help him consolidate the Zhou family. To put it bluntly, he was actually deceived by the rumors. It's just that now, it's too late to say yes. Brother, let's go, don't let my grandpa and grandma wait too long. The sixth prince pulled Bailey Fengming's sleeves in the mood of breaking the pot. Actually, the sixth prince knew clearly that the appearance of his brother here today was no accident. But faced with the wolf-like behavior of other people, he just felt that even if the emperor's brother was profitable, it would be reassuring. Having grown up among a large number of princes, the sixth prince naturally understands the turmoil among the princes. Although he was not interested in that chair, as long as he had enough food and clothing, he still had to find a reliable partner even if he wanted to wait until death. Looking around, the sixth prince felt that the prince's thighs were stronger. So, the sixth prince willingly stretched out his arms and hugged her tightly. Bailey Fengming looked at the sixth prince's determination that emerged from his cowardice, and smiled tacitly, "Let's go." But before the sixth prince could react, he saw Bailey Fengming walking straight towards the Han mansion alone. Then, under the gaze of everyone, he took Fan Qingjiao's hand. In this way, everyone can react. His Royal Highness the Crown Prince not only left by himself, but also took Princess Jingping with him. Ziliang is a place where men are king, let alone the princes who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. Generally speaking, in situations where men and women get together, even if they are a loving couple, the male is superior to the female. But look at His Highness the Crown Prince, who is supposed to be aloof now. Not only did he take the initiative to talk to Princess Jingping, but now he even didn't forget to take the person away with him when he left. How is this indifference to marriage? This is just too much concern. If the prince is indeed the most noble one among the princes, it is just that the former prince was not good at showing up and spent all day in the East Palace recuperating from illness. Therefore, over time, the people in the main city ignored this prince. Even if he is the crown prince, so what, the result is not a sick man who will not live long. But things are different now. Looking at the handsome face of His Royal Highness, he is simply more energetic than everyone present, and seems to be glowing under the sun. Even though the marriage between the prince and Princess Jingping is finalized, everyone still regrets it. If only they had known that today's crown prince would be so outstanding and highly appreciated by the emperor. At the beginning, they squeezed human heads into dog heads because they wanted to compete for the crown princess for their daughter. As the saying goes, if you compare people with others, you will die, and if you compare goods with each other, you will be thrown away. Under the halo of the prince, even the third prince, who had always been gentle, courteous, and personable, was no longer worth mentioning. There are even some people who are thankful that fortunately the princes of various families were smarter and did not step forward today. Otherwise, wouldn't they be like the third prince and be thrown into the dust as sadly? The sixth prince himself is a salty fish, so naturally he doesn't care about the comparisons of others around him. But when the same gaze fell on Bailey Wrongs, it became extremely sharp and piercing. The resentment that had always been shrouded in his heart flowed through his limbs and bones. Seeing Bailey Fengming pulling Fan Qingjiao into the carriage, Bailey Wrongs couldn't bear it anymore and said angrily, "Before the big day comes, it's so shameless to get married. It's a disgrace to the royal family." Everyone was shocked. Looking at the third prince in disbelief, his eyes were red with anger. Let's not mention that the prince and Princess Jingping have been granted a marriage. Just saying that it is really detrimental to the royal family's face. What does it have to do with you? Shouldn't it be the emperor who should worry about it? Third prince, don't think we haven't noticed your face that is obviously twisted with jealousy. In fact, Bailey Wrongs already regretted it when he blurted out these words. Even he realized that he was too impulsive today. But now that the words have been spoken, Bailey Wrongs has to hold on even if he is stiff. Facing Bailey Wrongs' extremely angry face, Bailey Fengming just smiled softly and said, "Brother, 3 emperors are teaching you that brother Lu Huang is still planning to get married. I beg brother 3 emperors to show your respect. I will personally visit the house to talk to third brother Huang, I apologize." These words were said in an extremely humble manner. If it were normal, Bailey Wrongs would be able to wake up with a smile even in his dreams. But now, Bailey Wrongs was so angry that he could faint while standing. Compared with the prince's humility and courtesy, Bailey Wrongs, who was always unreasonable and making trouble, became a joke. The sixth prince looked at the prince with gratitude in his eyes. Could this be what the legendary feeling of holding someone's thigh feels like? Han Jingchen, who had been sitting in the sedan for almost half an hour, felt her hurt and coughed helplessly, "Your Highness, please don't miss the auspicious time." The sixth prince finally came to his senses. With the help of everyone, he quickly got on his horse and staggered back home. Seeing this, the guests present also got into their carriages one after another. Scattered, scattered. Are you waiting for the third prince to bark at them again? It was Han Yao who was sitting in the main hall of the Han family. Hearing the news coming from the door, he breathed a heavy sigh of relief. Although he had never thought of taking sides in such a hurry, since there was no way out, the prince was always better than the third prince. At least the relationship between his daughter and the crown princess is close. In addition, the crown prince was chosen by the sixth prince on his own initiative, so the couple can be considered to be of the same mind. Mrs. Han looked at her master and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. She was worried to death when she saw the master and the third prince chatting happily yesterday. Fortunately, the master rejected the third prince in time, and now everyone is happy with the situation. Since the two elders of the Han family did not go to the sixth prince's residence, most of the guests from their parents' family also left directly. As for the prince's mother's family, seeing that there is no sweetness, they will naturally part ways. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 388. Chapter 388. Why don't you go to heaven? Bailey Rongs was sitting in the carriage, the anger in his heart still difficult to calm down. Looking down at the sachet at his waist, he pulled it off and threw it out of the car. As the sachet fell to the ground, Bailey Rongs' heart-burning anger seemed to subside little by little. Bailey Rongs was suddenly startled, and soon understood everything. No wonder Han Yao goes back on his word. No wonder he can't control his emotions so much. It turns out that he was afraid that he had fallen into Fan Kinjao's trap a long time ago. Fan Kinjao, Fan Kinjao, Fan Kinjao. Bailey Rongs was as if he was in a daze, gritting his teeth and reciting the same name over and over again, but he could not understand the hatred in his heart no matter what. I thought he had taken precautions against Fan Kinjao. The result is dense and sparse. He was still defeated by Fan Kinjao. Soon, Concubine Yu in the palace heard the news. As expected, Concubine Yu called Bailey Rongs into the palace and started to curse her. Concubine Yu never expected that the son she cultivated could do such a ridiculous thing and provoke the prince in public. Why don't you just go to heaven? No matter how upset Concubine Yu was and wanted to slap Bailey Rongs on the handsome face to relieve her hatred, the news that Bailey Rongs caused a big disturbance at the sixth prince's wedding banquet still reached the emperor. Concubine Yu had no choice but to run to the emperor and cry. Emperor Yongchang was also very angry about Bailey Rongs' behavior. Although he summoned Concubine Yu, he had no intention of speaking when he saw Concubine Yu kneeling in front of her crying. Concubine Yu cried for a long time and had to take the initiative to say, "Your Majesty, it's my fault that I failed to teach you the right way. I originally thought that as long as Princess Jingping granted marriage to the prince, Ace would be able to wake up, but who knows, it's still reckless." Emperor Yongchang frowned. What does the noble concubine mean by this? Your Majesty, you don't know. Ace has always been attached to Princess Jingping. I also tried to persuade him several times. I thought Ace would wake up, but he didn't expect that he would get deeper and deeper. Although he said that in the Han mansion that day, it's Ace's fault, but it's hard to say what happened even if I'm not here. Anyway, when she first invited many official ladies to visit the lake, Concubine Yu valued Fan Kinjao very much. Now I just use this as an excuse. As for why Bailey Rongs lost his composure, maybe he was seduced by Fan Kinjao? Emperor Yongchang certainly understood what Concubine Yu said. The reason why he originally gave Fan Kinjao to marry the prince instead of the third prince was because he had this in mind. He was well aware of the little tricks Concubine Yu and the third prince were doing behind the scenes. Although he turned a blind eye to most things, before he could swallow this breath, No one could imagine the chair beneath him. The prince cannot do it. Neither can the third prince. As for how these sons are willing to fight after he returns to the West 100 years later, it is up to them. To put it bluntly, letting Fan Kinjao marry the prince was, firstly, for Fan Kinjao's ability to turn stone into gold, and secondly, to maintain the balance between the prince and the third prince. It is said that Fan Kinjao and the prince are bound to each other. In fact, the prince and the third prince were also tied together. He is getting older, but he just wants to spend the rest of his life in a stable manner. Looking at the crying concubine Yu again, Emperor Yongchang called Bai Tu to sit down for her. It's not a big deal. Young people are always crazy about their feelings. You should give more guidance to the third child when you go back. Seeing that Emperor Yongchang's tone softened, concubine Yu nodded with tears in her eyes. I understand that. I will take good care of Ace. Now I just hope that after Ace's wedding, Princess Jingping can also just stay away from Ace. Concubine Yu knew that it was too difficult to label Fan Kinjao as unchanged based on her few words. It is impossible to use this to make Fan Kinjao step down from the position of crown princess. But she just wanted to say it. Even if Fan Kinjao can't be made to pay anything, it's enough to make the emperor suspicious. Even if Fan Kinjao really becomes the crown princess by then, as long as she is not favored in front of the emperor, she will be insignificant. Concubine Yu stayed in the imperial study room for another half an hour before stepping out of the threshold with the support of Aunt Ying. At the same time, Fenji Palace also received news from the emperor. Lily really defended Princess Jingping. As an elder, how could concubine Yu say such slanderous words? Now that Princess Jingping has not married His Highness the Crown Prince, concubine Yu is openly and covertly accusing Princess Jingping of having problems with her style. If they really get married in the future, concubine Yu doesn't know how to spread rumors and cause trouble. Empress Zhen 11 clasped the Buddhist scriptures in her hands on her lap, her eyes dim, and said, "There are endless demons in Yu Palace, and the Chinese New Year is about to come, and they haven't stopped yet. But I need a slave to tell the kitchen to make soup." Lily's meaning is obvious. Concubine Yu can go to the emperor to slander Princess Jingping, and the queen can certainly go to the emperor to clear Princess Jingping's name. Unexpectedly, Queen Zhen 11 shook her head. With the emperor's suspicious temperament, he may have become suspicious of concubine Yu's words. It is estimated that concubine Yu is waiting for her to hurriedly go to the emperor to intercede with Xiao Qinjiao. In this way, concubine Yu can continue to bewitch the emperor, saying that even she, the queen, is profitable to Xiao Qinjiao. Favoritism. This time the emperor granted marriage. She could follow the emperor's wishes and pay close attention to Xiao Qinjiao. But the emperor must not be allowed to think that she wants Xiao Qinjiao's ability and the Hua family behind her. Even if the Hua family is not as good as before, it is still a big taboo in the emperor's heart. I'm afraid the emperor has already made up his mind about this matter. We just need to sit quietly and watch. Lily was stunned. What do you want to see? Queen Zhen 11 said leisurely, I just saw how concubine Yu was treated. The princes are all getting married, and the palace is becoming more and more lively. The palace, a battlefield that has never seen smoke, has long ceased to belong to people like them who have lost their for sex. Amidst the rumors directed at the third prince, the wedding of the sixth prince ended smoothly. Under the recommendation of the sixth prince, Bailey Fengming and the two elders of the Zhou family had a very happy conversation. It's just that no one mentioned the government affairs in depth during the dinner, it was just superficial politeness. Fan Qinjiao looked at the two elders of the Zhou family who were still wary of Bailey Fengming, and he knew it very well. Winning over people is like treating a disease. The more complicated the disease, the less urgent it is. It is more prudent to take your time. Especially when Bailey Fengming was talking to Zhou Yu, deputy censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, it was obvious that Zhou Yu, deputy censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, was always looking towards Fan Kinjao intentionally or unintentionally. Fan Kinjao knew that this was to avoid her, so he simply found an excuse to get up and go to the wedding room. Han Jingchen was sitting alone in the wedding room in a daze when she saw Fan Kinjao push the door open and walk in. "Why are you here?" Looking at Fan Kinjao, Han Jingchen was no longer so nervous. Fan Kinjao put the tray in his hand on the table, which contained some pastries and snacks. "I'm afraid you'll be hungry if you haven't eaten for a day. Fill your stomach quickly to avoid starving your body." Han Jingchen's eyes turned red when she was moved. She grabbed a pastry and stuffed it into her mouth. After eating half full, she raised her eyes and looked at Fan Kinjao. "I really want to thank you for what happened today, Kinjao." Even though she was always in the backyard, she learned about what happened between her father and the third prince from the maid's mouth. Although she couldn't understand why her father suddenly agreed to introduce the Zhou family to the third prince, she was happy now that things were not going in the direction the third prince expected. Otherwise, if her husband really devotes himself to the prince, he will definitely leave her. Han Jingchen knew that since Fan Kinjao was the crown prince, she had to help the prince. She didn't know the reason for what happened today, but she was afraid that Fan Kinjao was the only one who could turn things around. Don't ask her why she believes in Fan Kinjao so much. She couldn't understand it either, but she completely believed it. Fan Kinjao didn't explain much to Han Jingchen, he just smiled and said nothing. Soon, there were footsteps outside the door. Just as the door was pushed open, there were not only the sixth prince, but also His Highness the Crown Prince. Facing Han Jingchen's shock, Bailey Fengming just smiled and looked at Fan Kinjao reaching out his hand. "Let's go, I'll take you back." Fan Kinjao patted Han Jingchen's shoulder again before walking towards the door. After realizing it, Han Jingchen seemed to have thought of something and shouted, "Kinjao, we all want to be happy." Fan Kinjao stopped for a moment, and his heart felt sour and warm. "Okay." The sixth prince was deeply moved when he saw the tears that his wife suddenly shed. Actually, he also wants to be happy. So, can you take him with you too? End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 389. Chapter 389. I'm just here to support you. During the dinner, Bailey Fengming drank a little too much wine. Fan Kinjao was afraid that he would feel uncomfortable riding in the carriage, so he simply asked Xiaoxian to stop the carriage and walked with Bailey Fengming. The streets late at night are already deserted. The gloomy sky suddenly saw stars falling down. Fan Kinjao looked up in surprise and saw it was snowing. This is the first snow this year. A hand suddenly held Fan Kinjao's hand. Fan Kinjao came to his senses and saw Bailey Fengming silently pulling her forward slowly. The warmth from his palm slowly transferred to her hand, warming her slightly cold fingertips. Actually, Fan Kinjao does not really pursue the so-called power. It's just that she owed too many people in her last life, and too many people owed her. So she must stand on a high ground in this life so that she can repay her kindness and revenge. But when everything really ends, where will she go? Fan Kinjao never thought about it before, but now she doesn't need to think about it at all. The answer has already appeared in her mind. The phoenix sings in 100 miles, if the country is peaceful and the people are safe, and the court is clear and bright, can you and I just stay like this? There is no power dispute, no intrigue, no struggle for power. Just so plain. Okay, without any hesitation, Bailey Fengming agreed with pampering and pleasure. Fan Kinjao was stunned. How about giving up all the power, wealth, and honor? Bailey Fengming smiled and said, "It would be nice to have you here. Without her, there would be nothing to miss about power, wealth, and honor." Fan Kinjao's heart felt extremely warm, but also extremely sour. Sure enough, as long as people have hope, they can move forward bravely even if they are full of thorns. The night is still quiet and the snow is still falling. Fan Kinjao thought about Bailey Fengming's sudden arrival today and asked doubtfully, "Did you know that the third prince would definitely seduce Han Yao?" Bailey Fengming said calmly, "I don't know." Fan Kinjao frowned, "Then why are you still here? If I hadn't come prepared, why would it be so just right?" Bailey Fengming turned his head, his dark eyes were full of her figure, and said cleanly, "I just went over to see you, and I happened to catch the sixth emperor's brother falling off his horse." At that time, Bailey Fengming didn't know what happened. But later when he saw Bailey Rongs lose his composure, he understood clearly. The mellow voice of Bailey Fengming, accompanied by snowflakes, fell into Fan Kinjao's ears, and it sounded too good to be true. It turns out that it was just right, but he just wanted to support her. If the third prince knew that you had unintentionally taken advantage of everything he planned carefully, I'm afraid he would be angry and sick. Fan Kinjao still knew Bailey Rongs very well. Bailey Fengming said, "The Vice-Censor Zhou Yu of the Metropolitan Procuratorate is not that easy to deal with. Everything has to be done slowly." Fan Kinjao seemed to have thought of something. "This is Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, and Zhou Chun of the Ministry of Rights." Bailey Fengming smiled faintly and said, "Zhou Chun's father is the younger brother of Zhou Yu, the Deputy Censor of the Capital Procuratorate." Hearing this, Fan Kinjao still didn't understand anything. Her relationship with the Zhou family was not very good in the past. Especially Zhou Ningxi, it would be nice not to say that he is an enemy. In the past, the grandson of Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the capital, was my companion. Later, because I was weak and had been recuperating in the harem, Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the Capital Procuratorate, simply sent his grandson to the palace. I am studying abroad, and I heard that Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the capital, said that when he goes to the palace this time, his grandson will go instead of the Zhou family. Fan Kinjao did not expect that Bailey Fengming had such a connection with the Zhou family. No wonder Bailey Rongs is so impatient. He is obviously worried that Bailey Fengming and the Zhou family will renew their relationship. However, since Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, was able to tell Bailey Fengming what he said, it is enough to show that the Zhou family may take sides. However, before that, Zhou Yu, Deputy Censor of the Metropolitan Procuratorate, wanted to let the prince accept your own grandson to explore the road. This is normal. It's like buying and selling medicinal materials. If you don't try them first, how can you know the effect of blending them together? After the wedding of the sixth prince, the other princes who were accused of marriage also married princes and concubines one after another. At the same time, the officials who were named to go to the palace as they pleased also received orders from the palace. Hua Yaoding was not surprised when he learned that the Hua family was among them. Now that his little Kinjao will almost become the crown prince, it is fitting that the Hua family will be valued by the emperor. It's just that Hua Yaoding did not go there according to the order, but entrusted the matter to his wife. Since he could still bring a family member with him, Tao Yuxian named Mu Yan. When the fourth daughter-in-law Yafu heard the news, she started busy packing Mu Yan's things. This tidying up lasted 3 full days. Fan Kinjao certainly understood what his grandmother meant. Now that the edict has its destination, he naturally has to think about Mu Yan. Everyone who can be ordered by the emperor to go to the palace this time is prestigious. If Mu Yan can really find a good family and get married, it will be considered a success. After all, the smile has always been on the Huai River and cannot come back. This year's New Year's smile will not be as good as the hair. In Ziliang, a woman who wants to get engaged after her hair age will be criticized and disliked by her husband. So my grandmother also made a good marriage arrangement for Mu Yan in advance, and the younger daughters she brought to the Hua family to marry would all be of high status. Even if Smiley delayed the engagement at Gigi's age, there would still be other younger daughters who could support her. Fan Kinjao felt distressed and heartwarming as he watched his grandmother calmly paving the way for everyone in the mansion. I am so busy that there is only one day left before I leave for the palace. Just when everyone wanted to take advantage of the day before to have a good rest and recharge their batteries before heading out, Fan Kinjao entered the palace. Normally, military pay is sent to the Ministry of Rites after the Chinese New Year. Since the emperor had to go to the palace to celebrate the New Year this year, Fan Kinjao thought of sending the general's salary to the Ministry of Rites before departure. In this way, the person in the palace will feel comfortable. As long as you make him feel comfortable, the trip to the palace will be less difficult. Grandma is getting older, and Fan Kinjao really doesn't want her to be involved in someone's suspicious plot anymore. The guards in front of the palace gate saw Fan Kinjao announcing himself and heard that he was here to deliver military pay, so he immediately sent someone to the Ministry of Rites. Within a moment, people were coming to the palace. Fan Kinjao just entered the palace gate, but what he saw was not someone from the Ministry of Rites, but Mr. Bai, who was serving the emperor. As soon as Bai Tu saw Fan Kinjao, he smiled and bowed and said, "I would like to pay my respects to Princess Jingping." Fan Kinjao nodded slightly. "Mr. Bai is too polite." Bai Tu nodded again and then walked in front to lead the way for Fan Kinjao. Along the way, Bai Tu didn't say anything else, not even superficial politeness. Looking from a distance, all the palace people saw was that Chief Bai was ordered to lead the way for Princess Jingping. Just before stepping into the courtyard not far away, Bai Tu, who was walking in front, suddenly whispered, "Princess Jingping must remember to kowtow and say hello." If you go to see Zhou Chun, with Fan Kinjao's current status, of course there is no need to kowtow and say hello. So it is very clear who wants to see Fan Kinjao at this moment. In fact, Fan Kinjao understood everything as early as when he saw Bai Tu. As the emperor's famous steward, being able to get a reminder from him is something that many people only dream of. Fan Kinjao prides himself on not having such a great reputation. Soon, a handsome face appeared in her mind. The phoenix sings in 100 miles. No wonder he is always able to grasp the news from the emperor in time. It turns out that the person closest to the emperor has long been Bailey Fengming's spy. End of this chapter. The legitimate daughter of the prosperous medical fragrance will not marry. Author, Jinchi. Chapter 390. Chapter 390 The extremely selfish art of controlling people. Soon, Fan Kinjao was introduced to the imperial study room. Looking at the emperor sitting behind the desk, Fan Kinjao knelt down in a polite manner to say hello. "My maid, Fan Kinjao, would like to kowtow to the emperor." It was Emperor Yongchang who was reviewing the memorial. He didn't even raise his head as if he didn't hear it at all. Fan Kinjao was not in a hurry, he just knelt on the ground and waited. Fan Kinjao felt hatred in his heart every time he looked at this man sitting high on the throne. Obviously he is regarded as a heavenly being by the people of Ziliang, but he does extremely selfish and disgusting things. Countries are eyeing each other, and even the Janai kingdom who is visiting this time has ulterior motives. But what this man was thinking about was not how to make Ziliang stronger, nor did he look at the faces of other powerful countries. He only thought about how to stabilize the power in his hands. The man from her flower family spent his whole life sacrificing his life and blood to defend the land of Ziliang, but in the end, he was sent to the border by the person who should be the most supportive and trustworthy, and even died tragically in an insidious plot. Be suspicious of ministers, control the prince, and allow the princes to plot against each other in order to balance the power in their hands. How can such a person be worthy of being the emperor? As a king, if you don't have a country and a country in your heart, and you don't have the courage to embrace the world, how can you talk about longevity and boundless life? Of course, no matter how much hatred Fan Kinjao hates, he still has to endure it. Don't say that she can't compete head-on with this extremely selfish man now. Even if it is possible, now is definitely not the time. Today's imperial court and even the royal family have been messed up beyond recognition by this man. They are restraining and taking advantage of each other. If the emperor dies at this time, the whole of Ziliang will definitely be in chaos. Even if Bailey Fengming ascends the throne as the crown prince, he will definitely be unable to cope with the rebellion of his siblings, the turmoil of the court, and the eager eyes of other countries. So now, Fan Qingjao must keep this man alive. Live well. The imperial study room was so quiet that one could hear a needle drop. Emperor Yongchang, who had just glanced at the memorial in front of him, was always looking at Fan Qingjiao's expression. Until Fan Qingjiao couldn't see anything on his calm face, he suddenly said, "I heard that there are rumors about you and the prince in the main city recently." Fan Qingjiao understood that this was testing her attitude towards Bailey Fengming. I replied to the emperor, "But my daughter didn't know about it." "How can you know if you don't care at all?" Emperor Yongchang narrowed his eyes and said, "The sixth prince got married a few days ago, and the prince is still in a couple with you. Do you really have no idea what the people around you think of him?" Fan Qingjiao acted indifferently, raised his head slightly and said, "My daughter is also at a loss about the arrival of the prince, but now that I have been granted a marriage by the emperor, I can't openly reject the prince." Since the emperor wanted to hear that she didn't like the prince, she just showed it to him. Emperor Yongchang looked at Fan Qingjiao in the center of the hall carefully, as if he was considering something. Suddenly, there was a loud noise outside. Immediately afterwards, I heard a young reporting urgently outside, "Your Majesty, His Royal Highness has just passed out." Emperor Yongchang did not answer immediately, but still looked at Fan Qingjiao in a daze. Fan Qingjiao knelt on the ground calmly, as if the report from outside had nothing to do with him. Other than Xiaoxian and Lin Yi, there was only Lian 11 who served Bailey Fengming. Although Fan Qingjiao didn't have a deep impression of Lian 11, he still remembered his voice clearly. If something really happened in the East Palace, people from the East Palace should report it directly. So it's obvious. It is a lie that the prince is in a coma, but it is true to test her attitude. However, Emperor Yongchang suggested at this time, "It happens that Princess Jingping is proficient in medical skills, so why not come with me?" Fan Qingjiao, who was kneeling on the ground, had no intention of getting up. "If I go back to the emperor, I am ashamed of my medical skills. The doctors at the Imperial Hospital are superb. Furthermore, the doctors at the Imperial Hospital should know the prince's body better than the court ladies." These words are enough to evade. Even Bai Tu, who was standing outside the door, listened to these words and mistakenly thought that Princess Jingping was afraid of being tainted, so she would rather watch His Highness the Crown Prince fall into a coma and die. Princess Qingping's words are good. Go and tell the imperial doctor to the prince. Hearing the emperor's words, Fan Qingjiao could only sneer. Even if Bailey Fengming showed affection to her according to the order, the emperor was worried that Bailey Fengming would fall in love with her for a long time. He simply came up with this idea, not only to test him, but also to let Bailey Fengming know her indifference and Gu's deep disgust for her in his heart. As expected, he is an extremely selfish man, and he is only thinking about ways to control others. Bai Tu outside the door heard this and quickly agreed for the young eunuch, and then went to the East Palace in person. In the imperial study room, Emperor Yongchang's expression on Fan Qingjiao softened a lot, and he even asked someone to come in and sit down. Fan Qingjiao first handed the prepared banknotes to the emperor respectfully. Emperor Yongchang looked at the thick banknotes in front of him and felt more and more that it was a wise decision to make Fan Qingjiao the crown prince. Just when Fan Qingjiao seemed to be defenseless, Emperor Yongchang suddenly asked, "I also heard that at the sixth prince's wedding that day, the third prince even ignored etiquette for you." Fan Qingjiao knew that someone might have complained to the emperor. Whether this person is concubine Yu or Bailey Wrongs, judging from the emperor's expression, I'm afraid he has already concluded that she took the initiative to seduce Bailey Wrongs first. That is the case. Then she did have something to say. Returning to the emperor, when we visited the lake that day, concubine Yu took great care of my daughter. I am grateful in my heart. Although my daughter has been married to the prince by the emperor, I know that I will never be with the third prince again, but as long as when I see the third prince, I can remember that my daughter might marry the third prince. To put it bluntly, if Bailey Wrongs hadn't run up to her and shouted, she would not have swayed from side to side. If you want her to no longer be disconnected from Bailey Wrongs, then please ask concubine Yu to find a dog chain and tie Bailey Wrongs' neck. Didn't the emperor not want her to fall in love with Bailey Fengming? Fan Qinjiao simply followed the wishes of Yu Palace and acted as if he still had lingering feelings for Bailey Wrongs. Since the emperor wanted to marry her to Bailey Fengming and balance the power of concubine Yu, he naturally had to guard against anything between her and Bailey Wrongs. Emperor Yongchang did not doubt Fan Qinjiao's words. In the final analysis, no matter how smart Fan Qinjiao is, she is just a little girl waiting to be married. Of course Emperor Yongchang himself knew very well what kind of virtue his son had. Faced with Fan Qinjiao's embarrassment and helplessness, Emperor Yongchang naturally began to doubt Bailey Wrongs' motives. The relationship between the sixth prince and you is not very good to begin with. Why did you join in the wedding? Isn't it just to take the opportunity to win over Fan Qinjiao and let Fan Qinjiao support you secretly? Fan Qinjiao saw that the emperor had already made up his mind, so he stopped. Emperor Yongchang, who originally wanted to test Fan Qinjiao, lost his mood and said, I will leave for the palace tomorrow, so go back early and prepare, and dismissed Fan Qinjiao. As soon as Fan Qinjiao left the imperial study, Emperor Yongchang drove to Yu Palace. When Queen Zhen 11 heard the news, she was so full of laughter that she almost laughed. Lily, what are you talking about? If concubine Yu wants to become a monster, someone will always need someone to help me get back. Lily also smiled and said, the queen has already planned to meet with Princess Jingping before the emperor, right? It's natural after all, they were a couple who had been together for half their lives. Even when the emperor sneezed, she knew whether the mucus would come out of her nose. But in the final analysis, concubine Yu also has to admit that she is unlucky. Concubine Yu's daughter-in-law is not as smart and capable as her own daughter-in-law. Just thinking about being a good match all day long is useless. End of this chapter.